and welcome to yet a very, very special edition of my weekly lives. Firstly, Happy New Year. This is the first time I'm seeing you this year. I've missed the last 2 weekends, one weekend, because of travel to the exotic locales of Morocco. I'm delighted to have with me somebody whose work I have respected, whose work I have followed, somebody who I've known on social media now for close to 9 years, and somebody who is a best-selling author. He's twice been on the New York Times bestseller list, the one and only Ashwin Sanghi. Ashwin, thank you so much for taking out time to drive all the way from South Bombay to our humble abode here.
Thank you, Gul. It's a pleasure to see you. And as I've mentioned in the past, you and I don't end up seeing each other that often. But when we do, there's almost an instant connect, including, for example, a very, very basic flying lesson on a flight.
Oh yes, of course, of course. In fact, the first time I actually met Ashwin was at a literature festival.
Absolutely.
In my hometown, which was Chandigarh. And you know, the excitement that I feel when I've met somebody on social media for so long, when I meet them, it's almost like it's suddenly like there's a form to the written handle on Twitter that you've been following and engaging with, and I read your tweets every day, especially the quotes that you put out, because I think you say so much through those quotes.
I try and be as innovative as possible with my tweets. And I find that social media nowadays has become a hotbed of negativity. So yes. I try and put out as much positive stuff
to counter it.
Yeah, to try and counter it. Because all of us just need a few positive moments during the day, and maybe those few things that we think about and we say, oh wow, you know, why didn't I think of it that way?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's incredible that what positivity can do for you. You could be having a terrible day and somebody just reads that, and it could change the way the way you perceive your whole day. So I think it's you know, I think it's fascinating. For me, what's actually also very fascinating, Ashwin, is that I mean, I read somewhere that in fact not somewhere, everywhere, Ashwin is an entrepreneur by day and an author by night, sometimes even with a generous dose of whiskey to help. But more on that in a bit. But what truly fascinates me, as from one multitasker to another, is that most people have challenges doing one thing, and you have excelled at multiple things.
Yes.
You went to Yale.
Yes.
You've been a successful entrepreneur, and now you're a very, very successful author. But I'm curious to know about the entrepreneurial side of it. I mean, 10 books notwithstanding.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was born in a Marwadi family, so it's taken for granted. I mean, business is in our blood.
Okay.
And I started working alongside my dad when I was barely 13 or 14 years old. But the one common factor in my life throughout was my maternal grandfather, who was very fond of reading. So he would send me a book every week to read. And during his lifetime, he sent me more than 400 books. So
every week?
Every week. Wow. Almost like your weekly FB Live.
Almost like the weekly FB Live.
And when I used to go to the office, there was a Munimji who used to teach me the two most important words of a businessman's life, which are debit and credit. Right. And he used to tell me that, you know, this book reading that you do, nothing is going to come of it. What's more important is bookkeeping.
Interesting.
And if you have to read, then read a balance sheet, not a book. So I was born and brought up with these two very, very distinct, very diverse streams. And of course, I did go for my MBA. I came back, joined the family business.
Which is one of the things is Sanghi Motors.
That's right. So one of the...
Which is the Mercedes, used to be at one point.
So my grandfather started out in the 30s as a dealer for Rolls-Royce in the Rajasthan states, erstwhile royalty.
Okay.
So he used to sell Jaguar, Rolls-Royce, Austin, and many of these cars. And then, of course, Hindustan Motors, Mahindra, Maruti, Mercedes, and so on and so forth.
Wow.
But at some point, Gul, it was great, but I was no longer excited. And, you know, I think it happens in everyone's lives, and the luckier ones experience it sooner in their lives.
Sure.
so that they are able to make the call.
And do something about it.
And do something about it. And so how I eventually made that transition is probably another discussion that we can have.
So I'm going to sort of do a slight digression here. How long did you straddle both the worlds?
Yeah.
Being an entrepreneur, a very, very successful businessman, enough has been written about you as an entrepreneur, although it's tough to find now because the writings in the media about your books have completely overshadowed
anything else.
So it's very tough for a researcher to dig out anything on your entrepreneurial side.
That's right.
And how long did you saddle the two together?
When the first book was the Rosabal line.
Yes.
And I wrote that sometime around 2005.
Is it here?
Yeah, it's right
that's
here.
it. Yes.
So 2005 is roughly when I wrote it. I self-published it in 2007. And of course, my father, I think, had visions that his son is going to put on a khadi kurta and go out with a jhola into the world.
Right.
And here was someone who had been trained for several years to take over the business.
Right.
And I told him, I said, look, I'm too much of a realist.
Right.
The fact of the matter is that I will never be able to sustain my lifestyle based on the initial royalties that I get from my books. So I have no alternative but to carry on working.
To straddle both worlds.
Exactly. And which is what pretty much happened all the way through till around 2012.
Right.
It's only in 2012 that I finally took a call and I said, no, 10 years ago, I was a businessman who was also a writer. Now I'm a writer who's also a businessman. So
Fantastic. For those of you who've just joined us, I'm in conversation with Ashwin Sanghi, celebrated best-selling author, and we're having a conversation about many things. In fact, we're going to launch into a very, very interesting subject very quickly. If you like what you're seeing, and even if you don't, show us some love, use the heart button, like and share. And we will keep chatting about more interesting stuff, which brings me to the meat of today's conversation that I want to try and talk about is, I read a very interesting quote in a book that I'm reading, the Keepers of the Kalachakra.
Yes.
Keepers of the Kalachakra, which is Ashwin's latest book. In fact, we'll talk more about that in a short while. And I want to read out this quote because to me, it's something that's fascinating and presents so many possibilities. So, I quote, "The British did us a great disservice by pushing the notion that our history was mere mythology. Both history and mythology contain core truths and embellishments, but in India, our Ramayana and Mahabharata were always considered itihas." Now, history versus mythology versus rationality, because ultimately you're a trained, educated, foreign educated person. How do all these three things coexist?
Well, frankly, Gul, I must tell you, I mean, for me, I think what sums it up beautifully is what C.S. Lewis said. He said that a myth is a lie that contains a truth. So,
for example?
So, take for example, one of my earliest visits into Kolkata when I had just become a writer, and I by chance ended up visiting a temple, and when I looked closely I realized that the deity that was being worshipped was that of Amitabh Bachchan. And when I walked outside the temple, I found a young boy who was selling a little book which was known as the Amitabh Chalisa. And I thought to myself, I said, you know, Ashwin, you may find that this is strange, but the truth is that this is the very question that we are asking ourselves about some of our greatest mythological heroes. That could these have been real people who then, because of their greatness, because of their deeds, they came to be worshipped. And
larger-than-life personas.
They came to be eventually worshipped.
Right.
So, I genuinely find that, in fact, in India, we never really distinguished between Itihas and Puran. We have Itihas, which is like, history, for example, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, which are peppered with fantastical tales, which seem almost amazing. And on the other hand, even the so-called Purans, which are meant to be fantastical, are very often based on historical figures. So the point I'm trying to make is that maybe the answer lies somewhere in between. at least for me as a writer, what has always fascinated me is not history per se or mythology per se. I've always found that if you take the word myth and you take the word history and you club them together, the word that you get is mystery. And that's what probably makes a lot of this reading so fascinating. It's that delicious what if this was real?
And right now, I mean, ever since in fact, the quote that I read out is spoken very early in the book by one of the characters. I forget which one. And ever since I've read that, my mind has been buzzing with the possibilities of what that means, and if you extrapolate that, because if you look at it, our history as we've consumed it, ever since the British took active control of India after the last kingdom which they annexed, which is the annexation of Punjab. They've pretty much controlled everything we've consumed.
Partly it was also because of a very biblical view. So for example, 4004 BC is roughly when the world was created according to the Bible.
Interesting.
And then we of course have almost around close to 1500 to 2000 years later, the great flood of Noah.
Which is in about 2000 BC.
That's right.
Approximately.
And it is 1000 years from that the Aryan invasion, supposed Aryan invasion, takes place.
Of India happens.
So the point is, to a very great extent, a lot of what we consider to be history is stuff which has emerged from a biblical view of thinking. And to my mind, it's increasingly this sort of commercial popular fiction. So for example, if you read the Krishna Key, I talk about the fact that the Rig Veda would have had to be composed along the banks of the great Saraswati, because each and every moment the sages are talking about the mighty Saraswati in full flow.
Right.
Now, for the longest time we were told that this means that the Rig Veda had to be written somewhere else because the Saraswati didn't exist as a river.
But it is believed to have existed and then gone underground.
Exactly. So now, increasingly, we have scientific evidence which shows that the Saraswati is available underground. Satellite reconnaissance as well as imaging is showing us that the dried riverbed exists. Not only that, but we also have indications that the dried riverbed channels have actually, the way you can do carbon dating for
living
wood,
matter.
Wood or carbon, you can actually do it for water to find out when the last recharge occurred. So in fact, we know that water stopped flowing around 3067 odd BC.
Wow.
So these are the changes that are happening, and obviously I am not a historian, I am not a researcher, I am simply a paperback writer who's trying to bring a lot of these things to the fore.
But it's incredible because you're making any rational person question the premise of everything they so far know to be true. And I'm actually going through that conflict right now, and I'm reaching a stage where at any given point, in fact, shortly before the book, your book that I'm reading, Keepers of Kalachakra, which we will talk about very shortly.
Thank you, Gul. You've plugged it in twice already.
But that's what friends do. That's what friends do. In fact, I'm loving the book. Along with this book, I always read two books at the same time. I'm reading a non-fiction work by Rajmohan Gandhi on the history of Punjab.
Okay.
And one thing which comes across is that in all his accounts of the battles that have been fought, right from the Afghan invasions, the Duranis and the Abdalis, was that we did not have record keeping. There is a precise account of, say, who fought from one side.
Yes.
But our side, unsung heroes, we have no records of.
Absolutely.
So is it because we are poor record keepers?
We never found, to a very great extent in Indian history, Indian culture, this is something that crops up again and again. But the flip side of that, Gul, is that take for example a simple epic like the Ramayana, you will find that almost about 40 generations prior to Ram have been outlined. The entire family tree of Ram, going back 40 generations, the lineage of Ikshvaku, is outlined in great detail within the Ramayana itself. Now, it's just that over a period of time, we have stopped treating that as history. Now, there are those who say, well, what's the big deal about 40 generations being outlined? Because it's very possible that could also be.
We did a poll here,
yes.
A small poll with a very, very limited sample, and I don't know what to say, but a lot of the young people that I spoke with believed that it was mythology, that it was not history.
Yeah, but the point is that then if it was purely mythology, which of course, by the way, I'm not in any way indicating that our great epics do not have tremendous embellishments.
And exaggerations.
Of course. I mean, take for example the Ramayana. You have 300 versions of the Ramayana. So then which of those will you treat as the absolute truth? Right. Or for example, if you, let's say, consider the Mahabharata, you started out with an epic which was known as the Jaya, which was 25,000 verses, which became an epic called the Bharat, which was 50,000 verses, which eventually morphed into the Mahabharata, which was 100,000 verses. I do not believe that it was one person called Sage Vyas who sat down and wrote the entire thing. Right. It was written over generations. And each one of them added their own point of view, their own embellishments to the story. But that doesn't take away from the core truth. The Ramayana, for example, when you talk about 40 generations, you'll find that it matches up beautifully with other works within Hinduism, including the Purans, as well as, for example, the Rig Veda itself.
My mind is in turmoil. So, completely in turmoil right now.
I don't know. To my mind, you raised an issue about rationality versus mythology. To my mind, a lot of mythology is based on deeper philosophical understandings.
Right.
Right. And that is where I consider myself to be slightly different, because I have always found philosophy far more interesting than religion. People think that I'm a religious writer. I'm much more of a philosophical writer.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see where you're coming from.
For me, philosophy is about questions that can never be answered, and on the other hand, religion is about answers that can never be questioned. I mean,
correct.
So I mean, the two are exceptionally different. And so where I feel that I need to involve some elements of religion, I do. But it's coming from a very
deep
different
philosophical place.
That's right.
For those of you who just joined us, I'm Gul Panag, and we're in conversation. I'm in conversation with Ashwin Sanghi, prolific author, best-selling author, been on the New York Times bestseller list, and we're now talking about his fifth book in the Bharat series and his 10th book in his entire lot of books. In fact, they're all here, The Keepers of Kalachakra. But before we come to that, I want to tell you that very shortly we're going to be doing a very interesting rapid fire round quickly after we speak about the book. So wait for that. It's a rapid fire with a twist. I don't know what question there is. Ashwin doesn't know what questions there are, and we're going to be asking each other questions, and I hope there are no embarrassing bloopers that come out of it. But we'll be getting ready for the rapid fire round very, very, very quickly. And please like, share, and use those hearts. So, your latest book, The Keepers of Kalachakra. There are so many terms that you've thrown at me. I mean, I'm saying this personally because I'm reading the book right now, that I am completely unfamiliar with. One is the keepers of the... what is Kalachakra? First question.
Okay.
Second question, Akshay, the thing that has knowledge of everything.
Yes.
Something. It's not coming back to me. The thing that knows everything in the world, that records everything.
The Akashic records.
Akashic records.
Yes.
These are my two specific questions.
Sure.
And then, what would you like to speak about this book that tells us, that it's the 5th book in the Bharat series, and that it's again, like every time, mythology, history, and the middle mystery. It is a mystery book, completely out and out. And it's set in a very interesting geopolitical time. You can completely identify with it.
We live in interesting times.
We live in interesting times, yes, where fact is perhaps stranger than fiction. So it's set in a time where you can relate to what's happening in America, what's happening in the Middle East, what's happening with this perceived threat of radical Islam.
Absolutely.
It's dealing with all these subjects, and I'm fascinated. And
sure. So should I get into the Kalachakra?
The Kalachakra and the Akashic records.
Yes. So the Kalachakra is actually a system of meditation which was created by the Buddha supposedly during the last year of his life. And there was a great king from the north, from a a mystical kingdom known as Shambhala.
I know Shambhala, yes. The Buddhists call it Shambhala.
Shambhala. Or Shangri-La.
Shangri-La, yes.
The West calls it Shangri-La.
Right.
And of course, Suchandra, who was the king of this place, is said to have come to Buddha and said that, well, you know, I would like to become a bodhisattva. In other words, I would love to be able to attain moksha.
Right.
But I lead the life of a worldly individual.
Right.
I can never become a celibate monk. So, how do I achieve that?
So, salvation at one level while continuing to live in the real world. Right.
And so, apparently, Buddha taught him a method which was known as the Kalachakra. Now, what does the Kalachakra mean? Kal means time. Chakra means wheel.
Right.
So, it's the wheel of time. Now, what the Kalachakra actually attempts to tell you is that you, whether it is your mind, whether it's your body, whether it's your consciousness, is all inextricably linked to the wider universe. And every happening, you know, you must have heard the butterfly effect.
Yes.
Where the butterfly can flap its wings and a storm is created somewhere in the South Atlantic.
Right.
Frankly, it's not as strange as it seems. So what the Kalachakra is telling us is that the world, the universe, is actually a complex web of relationships between the observer and the observed.
Right.
And as long as you can become one with the universe and realize that you are not distinct and separate from it, you can immerse yourself almost to the point where there are no distinctions left, then that is the moment at which you can attain moksha.
Just to let you know, we have a lot of people watching us right now, and we have a lot of questions. So there are we will come to the questions very, very shortly. But I want you to wrap the Akashic record conversation and tell us a little bit about the book before we dive into the questions that have come. Massive number of questions.
The Akashic records.
Akashic records.
The Akashic records, Gul, is actually something. The way let me put it in words that you will be able to appreciate.
Okay.
Because you're a flying enthusiast. So when an aircraft moves through the skies,
right,
it leaves a trail.
Yes. Yes.
And so every action, every word, every thought in the world leaves a trail. And
even negative thoughts and bad thoughts.
Absolutely. There is in fact nothing like negative. In fact, in the Kalachakra, the Buddha talks about the fact that there is nothing like an evil thought or an evil deed, because he gives you the example of a peacock. A peacock is this beautiful bird, this beautiful creature, and it can consume poison without dying.
From a snake.
In fact, the poison only brightens its plumage. So the view is that how can you take a negative thought or an emotion and actually use it positively?
This is sounding like a counseling session. We need to be doing many more of these, because it's making me question so many things and see things so differently. Sometimes I berate myself because we all have negative thoughts.
Yes.
And no matter how positive you want to be, you sometimes have negative thoughts. And if you read literature like what Paulo Coelho writes, or the lady who wrote Secret,
absolutely,
you worry that will these negative thoughts come alive and become true? And then how do I negate the impact of the negative thoughts I've been having?
Of course. But then the point is that if you think of the word Tantra, which is where Tibetan Buddhism comes from, Tantric Buddhism, Tantra means actually to weave, to warp. Okay. So what Tantra is telling you is the fact that you are intimately connected to every other being, to every other creature, to every other thought, to every other sentiment, to every other emotion in the world.
Oh my God.
To a very great extent, just the way we can also put out negative thoughts into the universe, we can also observe positive thoughts from the universe.
Okay, this is very, 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 very deep. Okay, wonderful. So, if you had to tell us, we have a lot of questions that we need to. Yes. Okay. There are many questions coming, so we need to dive very quickly into the questions. But I need you to speak about the Keepers of Kalachakra very quickly to anybody who's watching and why they should buy the book.
Well, Keepers of the Kalachakra basically talks about a world of religious conflict.
Today's world.
Today's world. And the fact that increasingly we are talking about an exceptionally polarized world. But the funny thing is, Gul, that I'm realizing as we are going along that a lot of the stuff that our ancient sages, our seers, what they told us is stuff which is now being discussed and analyzed by the latest theories within quantum science. And so it's, it's an effort to take a lot of the theories of quantum science and combine them with ancient Eastern philosophy.
Okay, got it. Okay, I just quickly have to say a shout out to all of our friends who've been watching. Hi to Anil Rohila, Bhaskar Prasad, Satish Kumar, Dipen Vyas. I mean, I'm not able to scroll down further on this phone. Let me try the other one. But we have questions coming up. So Raja Sen,
yes,
my friend and brutal critic.
And in fact, he had done a session with
you.
I think a week or two ago.
He done a live here. So he asks, which is your favorite Ashwin book and why? Now, this is a very, very embarrassing, how shall I say, admission from my part. Ashwin and his publishers have diligently sent me books over the last 5 to 6 to 7 years, knowing of our friendship on social media. And somehow I've been, there's a boarding school term that we use for not consuming things. I'm not going to use that word. You know what that word is. I'm not going to use it. It's politically incorrect. But I've been holding those books for when I want to read them later. So I finally, when we decided to do this live session, Ashwin had sent his book to me way before that.
Yes.
I started reading it, and I've been sucked in so deep that my mind is now in turmoil at a level that I haven't experienced.
So we can just leave it as Keepers of the Kalachakra.
Keepers of the Kalachakra, yes.
Absolutely.
So that is my answer, Raja. It's a very long one, but it is Keepers of the Kalachakra. Okay, Nitin asks, have you sold the rights of any of your books for a film?
Currently, the rights of the Krishna Key are with Eros Entertainment.
Wow, okay.
And currently the Sialkot Saga, which was my last book in the Bharat series.
Which you also sent me, thank you.
You're most welcome, which hopefully at some point of time you'll get down to reading.
Yes.
But the Sialkot Saga is currently being scripted by Hansal Mehta.
Hansal is a very fine director.
So,
very, very fine director.
So that,
and writer.
And somehow or the other he just fell in love with that particular story, and he thought it lent itself to a series. So it's being scripted as a series right now, and we are in the final stages of a option agreement on Chanakya's Chant.
Okay.
So as of this year, 3 of my books will be at various stages of
optioning. So there you have your answer. I think we have time for just one last question. I'm unable to see. We will, of course, both Ashwin and I will try and answer as many questions that we have here. We need to quickly do this rapid fire and see what it throws out. I'm going to try and meanwhile do a shout out to everybody we can see here. We have over 200 comments.
Oh wow!
And currently close to 3,000 people have watched us already. So let's go. First you, because you're the guest.
Sure. So this is a question which I have to ask you.
Either which way. Now whatever it is you have to ask.
Have you ever read a book just because you're friends with the author? That sounds suspiciously like me.
So I have. Okay, this is not the case. This is brutal. Yes, I have read many books. Many books because I'm friends with the author. Sometimes I'm at the book launch event and I've had to read the book. And yes, so the answer to that is yes. But this is not one of those books. This is not one of those books.
So sweet.
So my question to you. This is so. Okay, who is writing these questions? They're so cheeky. Actresses writing books is basically a short for my time in Bollywood is over. Do you agree? This is so brutal.
Sorry, I didn't understand the question, Gul.
Actresses writing books is basically a short.
Yes.
For my time in Bollywood is over. Do you agree?
God.
This
That's
is horrible.
Evil.
Considering
That's
I'm writing a book. I'm writing a book.
That's positively evil.
It is very evil.
But I must tell you, I think we are living in a world where voyeurism is all too prevalent.
Yes.
And people want to know what's going on in people's lives.
Right.
I mean, that come on, social media would not exist if it weren't for the fact that it suddenly gives us a peep into the lives of celebrities.
Yes, I'm just trying to get up with the comments.
So I genuinely believe that every book has a place,
right?
Including books which are written by Bollywood
actresses,
and books which are written by
actresses.
This is
such an evil question.
Absolutely.
Over to you. This is horrible. But yes, everybody has a right to tell a story. So whether they're actresses or not, and read my story when it comes out.
So Gul, when was the last time that you bought a book? You must be receiving so many books, right?
So thanks to social media and thanks to me turning up at book launches, people don't even know. I'm inundated with books that keep getting sent to me. So no, I don't buy paper books anymore at all. The only books that I buy now are on Kindle, because that's how I'm able to read books. In fact, ever since I switched to the Kindle and Amazon, you should be very happy to hear that. I have actually, my reading volume has gone up dramatically.
It's quite incredible, right?
I like
because you're reading on a flight, you're reading in a hotel room,
or in the backseat of a car when you're driving, because Mumbai has such long distances, and it's just one of those things that.
And as you age, not that this applies to you, but for me particularly, the ability to be able to change font size is a tremendous value add.
Okay.
So I like reading in large font. And not only that, but I'm also able to switch between books at the drop of a hat.
Yes, that's what I like about the Kindle. So there's a book, again, I've been hoarding, which is Rajmohan Gandhi's, because I'm enjoying this book in Punjab so much. So I read a bit and then I absorb it. Then I'm simultaneously also reading Sebastian Junger's Of Tribes and Homecoming. He's the author who first wrote about PTSD.
Right.
And trace the origins. Very short book, but you can only read two pages at a time, because it leaves you so much to think about. Okay, this is a question for you. Agatha Christie or Murakami?
Oh, Agatha Christie, hands down.
Okay, your turn.
I have never been ashamed of the fact that I am the Big Mac and fries of reading.
I thought Chetan Bhagat was that.
So to that extent, the moment you will use the word Arthur Conan Doyle, or you will use the name Agatha Christie, it doesn't matter which list they are on, they will always be at the top of that list.
Okay, Big Mac and cheese. Next question. I think this is probably the last one we should do, because we are really over time now. Yes, really, this is fantastic.
So, Gul, which book wouldn't you read after the second page?
There are several. And I don't think I should use this particular platform. These cheeky people who prepare these questions are evil and mean.
Absolutely.
And I know the name of that person. I'm not going to name that person on this live right now. Several books, because sometimes books are sent, and a lot of, I think digital publishing has made sure that that it's easy to get published. No offense meant. I know it takes a lot of effort and time to write.
Do you know that a couple of years ago they did a study to find out till what extent is the average book read, and the average page number till which a book is read is 18. So this is the universal average.
Okay. So I'm not a bad person.
So just imagine the number of books that never get read.
Wow. As long as they're bought, the publisher should be happy.
Absolutely.
Or they're gifted, in which case, the bookshelves are looking pretty. Okay, I'm going to do the last question. We're going to leave the other mean questions that I don't know what's here. Okay, this is to you, obviously. What is your favorite book and author? Obviously, you can't count any of these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 books. None of these 10 books.
Yeah. Well, all-time favorite, hands down, Salman Rushdie, Midnight's Children. No question about it.
Okay.
I really wish that I could have written that book. So
you like it that much.
There's a deep-seated envy in me that why can't I write like this?
Okay.
But I would say the book that I keep going back to very often is Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yoganand.
So again, straddling two different worlds.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So there's Salman Rushdie, who is here, rather here, and then there's...
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
And I think partly the reason for that is because through my growing up years, I had my grandfather sending me books like War and Peace. And
I love that book. That's another book I'm holding.
Yeah.
So I read a few pages and I absorb it.
But again, it's one of those which you will need to take it in small doses.
And so much subtext. subtext for me, the political subtext of that book is genius.
So
before its time.
Grandfather sent me books that were meaningful. Like, for example, he sent me the Mahabharata retold by Raja Gopalchari, and he sent me autobiography of a yogi when I was 13 years old. But then there was my mom, who was always reading the latest paperback. So whether it was the latest Jeffrey Archer or Sidney Sheldon or Robert Ludlum or Frederick Forsyth or Arthur Haley.
Arthur Haley I like very much.
So she would always pass those on to me, and I think so in that sense I am a combination of those two streams of books.
Very interesting. Well, this has been a fantastic conversation, Ashwin. I can't thank you enough. You have been like that counselor, that philosophical counselor to me, and I hope in days and years to come I can say friend, philosopher and guide.
Oh, absolutely.
In time to come.
In fact, this conversation could have gone on for quite a while.
It would, and in fact, if it wasn't for Facebook's best practices, we would. But we're really over time, because we're told that an ideal life should be at 15 minutes. We stretched to 20, 25, and at last count we were at 34.
Oh,
so
you're serious?
We are at 34 minutes.
Oh my.
Thank you all for watching. This is Gul Panag, Ashwin Sanghi.
Pleasure.
Do read his new book, The Keepers of Kalachakra, and do like, share, and use the heart button. Thank you. We'll be back again next week with an interesting subject.
Thank you.